Howdy y'all and hello all. Welcome back to O State All Day. If you've had the ability to check out my last couple of videos or even some of the breakdowns that have been coming out now, there's been a large majority of them come out today. I think a couple people came out with something in regards to the Oklahoma State-Baylor game yesterday as far as breakdowns and film study and picks and things of that nature. So I'm glad that I was able to get mine out, a little bit early. I do a lot of research. I dig in fairly extensively. I've got a pretty good understanding of how this thing goes, how rotations work. So I appreciate everybody tuning in. I'm glad that I could get this information to you just, a little bit ahead of the curve. But one thing that I've clearly been making a point to overemphasize in my last couple of videos is the recruiting pitch, right? With what you just saw in the last couple of days between OU and Texas A&M. They're a massive recruit. I'm not gonna, dive too far into it because if you're watching this video, you're probably a fan. If you're a fan of football, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about. But evidently, this individual kind of gave the illusion that he was going to OU because something in regards to him committing was trending, and for some reason it was trending so far in the Oklahoma direction, it seemed like a foregone conclusion, and then it turned out that he went to A&M. Again, if you watch my last couple of videos, you'll see this tie-in. Is the money going to end up being worth it in the end? And how long is this going to last? Because I do feel like there's going to become a governing body. I don't think it'll be the NCAA per se either. They've shot themselves in the foot so much. Especially, I don't think this is me being 100% biased. No, I know it's not actually, because the reaction last year to Boynton's press conference when we found out we were going through the postseason ban was so genuine. You could see so many comments about parents basically saying, I'd love for my kid to play for that kind of guy. And that reaction is precisely why I'm talking over and over and over again about the difference in recruiting. And if you've only been a fan for a short window of time, you can't really fathom what I'm talking about. Because getting 3 stars for a recruit legitimately at one point in time was a pretty big deal. We would have a large portion of our recruiting classes that had no rankings. And what is evidence of that is, let's say you trace the steps back. If this family aspect thing I've been talking about is going to be roadmapped, I think that I'll be able to explain it even better on a week-to-week basis than honestly anybody else. But the slant that I'm seeing here is, let's take a peek back to that 2005 season, which was Gundy's first year. And as I'd already mentioned in a previous video, we weren't good. We weren't good at all, really, which is odd when you look back and see all the players that ended up playing in the NFL. Some of them had quite a long career, whether it be backup practice squad. You got to realize practice squad gets paid more than 80% or something to that effect of the country any daggone ways. So the successful players that we had didn't equal what we ended up having in the win-loss column, but it did kind of catapult us to get us in a position to be prepared for those 2008-9 Georgia matchups, because that was really a big uptick for us. And we did not control the local recruiting. Clearly, if you look back, OU did. And if you think of people like your Rocky Kalmuses or your Sam Bradfords or your Ryan Broyles, these are all people that we thought we had a shot at getting, but it just never worked out. We never got those guys. And if you've been following the recruiting the last couple of years, we have been getting those guys. And I'm going to put that in context. You ready? So 2005 season, Gundy's first year, we had a plethora of players end up playing in the NFL. Now, they didn't all stick forever. Some of them were backups for a long time, but when you think of Parrish Cox, who played not only with the Denver Broncos, I believe he played quite a bit with the 49ers. He was their starting nickel guy, and that was when that new nickel coverage was starting to become more common, as opposed to the big hog mollies up front. They had, him rotating in quite a bit. He also did a lot of returns for them. Jacob Lacey played very, very well for the Colts. He had quite a good career with the Colts. Corey Hilliard was with the Colts for a little bit as well. Russell Okung, everybody knows about. He was the first person ever to self-negotiate a Bitcoin contract in the NFL. Everybody knows about the infamous "I'm a man, I'm 40" speech, so clearly Bobby Reed was on that team. Zach Robinson, we just got from Colorado. That was a massive get at the time. And he was a 3-star, but he was huge for us to get. And the fun part about it was you could see a little bit of momentum, because he was coming to back up Bobby Reed. Bobby Reed at the time with XLK, Xavier Lawson Kennedy, was the highest rated recruits literally ever at Oklahoma State University. And then I just mentioned the XLK, Steve Mocco, you probably know more from wrestling, Ryan McBean. He played with the Eagles for a few seasons, defensive end. We had Ori Lemon. Ori Lemon actually stuck with the Dallas Cowboys as like a glue piece guy for a while. Rotated around that third string practice squad, and it's so crazy to think back. For us as fans, that was a big deal. Ori Lemon being a backup for the Dallas Cowboys was huge because everybody knows Barry Sanders, Hartley Dykes, the Dexter Manley story. So you have some outliers with Thurman Thomas, Des Bryant. You have outliers of big-time Cowboys, but consistently, it doesn't happen very often. The fact that we have 22 NFL players in the NFL at this very moment, that's something that a lot of us probably never could see coming. But even to continue on, if you look at the CFL minor league type stuff, we had a lot of players that ended up going that route, like Marquis Fontaine. Julius Crossan was actually with the Dallas Cowboys, if I recall correctly, for a little bit. Keith Toston was a beast, y'all. He is on my top 5 OSU running back Rushmore. I know that Barry and Thurman have to be on there, and I couldn't disagree by any stretch of the imagination. So maybe I had an extra head. I don't know. I was always a big fan of Keith Toston, and then Martell Van Zandt. He was the deaf cornerback that ended up starting, and he was fun to watch. It was just so crazy to think that was our story. That was our history. And as I read all of those type of names to you, the one thing that doesn't jump off the page, that should, is before you get to Okies, Jacob Seacrest was a big old offensive lineman they had. I played with him in high school. He only stuck for a season, but he was from Stillwater, which was also a big deal. Contrary to, I've heard some comments about Oklahoma State and Stillwater High always having a really good relationship, partnership type thing. I wouldn't necessarily go that far, because from being there, we had some dudes that ended up playing D1 that didn't get a lot of love from O State. And when you live literally like a couple miles from the university, you find it kind of odd that you can have a dude that ends up going to another Big 12 school, being a 2-time first-team All-Big 12er, and him being in a different jersey just doesn't make sense. So I'm glad that relationship is now a legitimate thing. I do think that the case in point there would be Tucker Barnard, which is the coach for Stillwater High School that we stole over from Arkansas. His son is on the OSU team, and the reason that I bring that up is to segue into, you got to get to Donovan and DeJuan Woods before you get to Okies, other than like Nathan Peterson, who came from, I believe, Union or Jinx. Sorry, I know, they're big rivals. He's from Tulsa. We'll split it down the middle there. But other than them, you only had a very, very minuscule amount of Oklahoma contributors on the team, and it's just, odd to some degree to see it now be completely different. I guarantee you, if you go back and dig for the 05, 06, 07 type of rosters, which you can do, but for some reason, the research is actually not super simplistic on it, especially breaking down where everybody went to high school, unless you're going through all of the recruiting cycle stuff, which is time consuming, but I have enjoyment there. But anyhow, if you go back to then, you can literally count on two hands, right? So that's 10, maybe 12, max 15, max, between walk-on scholarship players and the minuscule amount of even starters were local prospects. Because, again, we didn't get the Rocky Kalmuses and Sam Bradfords of Oklahoma at the time. The shift over the last few years has been a breath of fresh air. Venables coming in, I do think that's going to be something that he does focus more on than Lincoln Riley did. Lincoln Riley seemed more, well, not seemed, I think it's evident now, he was more than content with not focusing on in-state recruiting. So thank you, Lincoln Riley, for giving us that window, but thank you, Gundy and staff, for capitalizing and it meaning something, because now we have the word pipeline built into some of our recruiting. Never thought that would be a thing, but a pipeline from, let's say, Edmond, Santa Fe to Stillwater, Oklahoma. This is a beautiful, beautiful thing put together, and I think kind of all started back with like a Calvin Bundage. And then you got Trace Ford's from there, Colin Oliver's from there, the Chetrons are from there, both of the brothers. This is a really good thing that we got going, and I really feel that once you have those type of connections established, like Bob Stoops did, like Switzer did, it gives you the ability to squeeze out the competition. Again, I think Venables is going to emphasize that a lot more, so the recruiting battles are going to get really fun again. But if you look at this roster, right, so in the beginning, you're talking 10, 12-ish local prospects on the team, and maybe a handful of those would actually start or play or add a lot to the entirety of the season. If you look at the roster now, you can find like 57, and that's just out of 85 scholarship players, guys. Now, obviously, not all of these people are on scholarship, right? But some of them, it's not because they couldn't be. Some of them, it's because financially it doesn't really make sense to have this person on scholarship when it's not a big deal for that person not to be on scholarship, right? And it does give Gundy a little bit more freedom to divvy things up. Case in point, our backup quarterback is a walk-on that doesn't technically count against, well, it doesn't at all count against the scholarship number. Could he be on scholarship? Well, absolutely, but there's no point when your dad's making $4 or $5 million a year. It just, you know what I mean? And so I think that that's helpful. With that tie-in, you have not only Gunner, but let's look at people like Kenyatta Wright. Cool story with him, real quick. Me and my best friend from kindergarten, we grew up playing all sports together. Our dads coached against each other. We went to OSU games a lot, and one of our first games that we remember going to, Kenyatta Wright in his number 7 jerseys, running through the tunnel, and he throws up a wristband, and I catch it, and he throws up another wristband, and my brother catches it. So we wore these, and we were kids, so this wristband was massive. It took up your entire arm, but you didn't care because it was Kenyatta Wright's. I didn't give 13 hoots how ridiculous I looked or didn't with the thing on. I was going to wear it. I remember watching R.W. McQuarters go absolutely nuts in the Mizzou triple overtime game on Lewis Field. From returning to receiving to playing corner, it was amazing. And again, the recruiting aspect, his son is here too, Rylan McQuarters. And then Kenyatta Wright's boys are here. Solomon was fairly heavily recruited, not fairly, he was very heavily recruited. Ended up going to Arkansas. Thank goodness he was able to find his way, come back home. Elijah Wright's on the team as well, who played a little bit lower level, but that connection is kind of, again, what I've been referring to over the last couple days, and today I'm going to try to hammer it home. So if you had 10 to 12 local prospects, and now you have in the 50 range, 50, 60s range, that's absolute insane. And I mentioned the guy that I played high school ball with that played a year at OSU, Jacob Seacrest, because he was the only Stillwater guy at the team. Now, They did end up having Bryant Ward come in a little bit later on, and he had a very, very phenomenal career. He was two-time All Big 12 as well. So there are some similarities, but they grew from, again, that 10 to 12 number to the 50-60s number. Not only that, the Stillwater connection, there is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, at least 8 Stillwater High School players on the roster at this very moment. Some of those are on scholarship, like Gabe Brown. Gabe Brown was a very, very highly recruited linebacker out of Stillwater, and he kind of came with Gunner in the bunch. But that kind of thing was a foregone conclusion, like I said, a long time ago. We were not going to get the Shetrons. It just wasn't going to happen because of the dominant force that OU was for a very long time, because of the relationships I think that they had. And I think it's very safe to say that Lincoln Riley did do damage, because Lincoln Riley allowed Gundy and staff to kind of take a foothold on the top recruits in the state. It'll be fun to see how Venables tries to kind of combat that as we move forward. I really wanted to do a multitude of sports in this video because this comparison thing, like Brooks Manzer, Brendan Manzer, and basketball. I alluded to Jordy Mercer coming back the other day. We could do an entire video, and I know that we will on the holidays. Are we ever going to get one of Matt's boys actually on the campus to play baseball? Not looking good for the home team, but I'll dive into that a little bit more as well as his draft status prospects. Kind of have a fun story that I've heard. So instead of kind of cramming it all together, I'm going to break them down sport by sport, because I think that this deserves its own respect. And not only do you have this 50 to 60 number range of local talent on the roster, but you also have a massive amount of them that are key cogs in the machine. They're not just guys that are here. Brock Martin, Brennan Evers, I've already mentioned the Shetrons. I do think Tabor's going to be exactly what we're looking for from the tight end position. But the family connections, like I mentioned with the Wrights and McCorders, having Greg Richmond back, having J.W. Walsh back, the Green twins, like that's really cool. Trayson's still on staff, even though his brother Tylen is looking like he's putting up some things right now with the Ravens. The family connection, it goes and it goes. You have Braylon, you have Brennan, you have Cale Smith, you have Cam Smith, you have Gunner, you have the Gabe Brown kind of coming in, Kendall Daniels and C.J. Brown were both 4 stars from Beggs, Oklahoma. These things matter. And I think that we should shout this stuff from the rooftops, because the secret's going to get out eventually. And it's so fun to finally be able to say, you know what? We don't care. We don't care if the cat's out of the bag. Gundy's openness and just telling it like it is without being too overconfident and cocky, it's such a breath of fresh air as Cowboy fans. It feels like we're arriving. We've got to capitalize, obviously, but it does feel like we're getting to the level that we could all always have dreamed of. It feels like 45. That's a reference to the 1945 National Championship. So dive in with me next video as I cover the reason there is a little bit of disparage remarks when it comes to the 45 National Championship scenario. I'll break down exactly why it is what it is, how it retroactively got course corrected, and why Army has a major part in not helping out the process at all. So this connection thing, it's gonna make more sense the more you tune in. The more dots that we connect, the more informed we become, the better the watching experience is, right? The beard, I've been doing this every year since 2011. I don't cut it until the day we lose. So hopefully by the time that the season's over, that you're not even going to see half my chest, right? That's my goal here with you guys. But you know the drill. Go ahead, hit the like, subscribe, share buttons, and let me help this grow, guys. and we'll get this thing rock and rolling. God bless. Love you guys. Go Pokes. Catch you next time.